I came to New York. I grew up in Connecticut, and after college, I joined what was called VISTA, Volunteers in Service to America, which was a program that where you would go to a low-income area and help people, and that's what I wanted to do. I had majored in sociology, and that's the kind of work I wanted to do. So I joined VISTA, went through the training, and then actually was sent here to Los Sures to work on housing. And that was 48 and a half years ago. So I've been here ever since. Los Sures is basically a housing organization. That's how it started out. In 1973, there were people in the community, mostly the local churches, that were noticing the problems with housing. Landlords were abandoning buildings. People didn't have services. So they helped organize tenants in the buildings, and that seemed like the best way to get things going. So it was basically through the local churches that Los Sures was founded as a community organization to work with people to help them improve their housing conditions. And I came soon after that, and what we were trying to do was organize tenants to know what their rights were and to take action so that they could improve their housing conditions. Over the years, we've organized hundreds of tenant associations. We've also helped buildings form tenant co-ops after organizing and going through city programs. Los Sures also has done rehab and management of low-income housing and some new construction also. So that's another area that we've been involved with through the years. And also we've been involved with social services because we saw the needs for people to have extra assistance, not just with housing. So we have a social services program that helps tenants with applications, homelessness, getting, assistance in various areas of their life, and which includes a food pantry, which has been very successful in the past couple of years, which is because of the pandemic, it was something that was really needed. So food pantry is a very big part of it. There's a hydroponic farm also. So a lot of different things going on with social services. We have a senior center, which also provides a meal program for seniors in the community, also very successful, and different programs for seniors and trips and stuff like that. And so those are the main things that we're doing. I just can't tell you the exact number, but it's certainly in the hundreds, because buildings of 30 units, you think of families with children, and then their buildings, they range from size of 30 units, 4 units to 3 or 4 units. Mostly low-income Hispanics. Mostly low-income, right? Yeah. When I came here, the neighborhood was almost completely Puerto Rican. And it's changed over the years to increasingly Dominican, Mexican, and South American and Latin American. When I first came here, the problem was abandonment. Landlords were just walking away from their buildings, leaving tenants there with no resources to get heat and hot water, basic services. So that was what was happening then. And so tenants we helped organize for getting at least minimal services, holding rent strikes, going to housing court, and trying to get the landlords to make repairs in the cases where they were still there. In other cases, getting appointed administrator to run the building, holding their rents if needed, to use their rent money to buy fuel. All those things were happening because there were maybe a 30-unit building would have 15, 20 people left in it, and so, but no landlord. So all that time, as things have evolved, people have realized that Williamsburg is a desirable neighborhood and a desirable place to live. It's close to Manhattan, transportation. We knew that all along, but all of a sudden people realized it. So, there's been a lot of gentrification, a lot of new people moving in, which definitely forces landlords to try to get people out, because they can see that these newcomers will pay a lot more rent, most of it illegal, but they'll pay a lot more rent than the people that have been there can afford to pay or should pay legally. So there's been a lot of harassment, a lot of kind of forced tenants out. So now, instead of it's really the same kind of thing, organizing tenants to stay in their buildings. Not that the landlord isn't there anymore, but the landlord is there, but doesn't want them there. Doesn't want them there. So they have to, know what their rights are, continue to organize and work together. So the landlord knows they know what their rights are and that they can, they have a right to stay in the building. They have a right to a reasonable rent. They have a right to reasonable services. So those are the kinds of things that we're continuing to do. The battles are many and the victories are few. But when there's a victory, it's a really good thing. So we've been able to help tenants really by organizing, get together and save their buildings. I mean, that's what's happened throughout the neighborhood, and it's been very successful. And I think that's part of the reason a lot of people want to move in here because, they know it is a good neighborhood. We've had many battles over the years. One of the biggest ones was with, the Berry Street houses, which was, a NYCHA project. It's the most recent one. But it goes back to the 1990s, 1994, I think it was, or 1996, when it was being tenanted by the housing authority. And once again, other projects in the neighborhood, and there are several public housing projects, were tenanted by mostly Hasidic tenants, which felt unfair to the Latino community because there was a waiting list and they didn't get in there. So we formed a fair housing committee that was trying to look at what was going on. And so when this project was being rented, the community really stood up and said, we're not going to let this go. This is like 180 units of housing, of low income housing that people in this neighborhood deserve to have. So really it was kind of, we called it a takeover. And it was really, successful in getting the attention of the city, the attention of the housing authority, attention of local elected officials. And so there was a mass move-in to this project, overnight, one Friday night. And, the housing authority came down with a van to negotiate. We had negotiations the next couple of weeks. So we were able to highlight some of the discrepancies and the discrimination actually that was going on in public housing. And so, we made the point there. So that really felt like a victory because it got a lot of press. It was the first news item every night on the TV for a couple of days, and it was really something. Well, Los Sures was, and there were other people in the community, board members of Los Sures. David Santiago was one of them. He's since passed away, but there were David Santiago, other board members, David Lopez, Reina Valles. These were all people, that had been leaders and that were on like our board. They weren't very active in the community, and they were part of this also. And Carmen Calderon was another local leader that was very much involved in this. Well, yeah, there are losses. And unfortunately, sometimes it's been very difficult because we don't think it's fair or legal. And there's one particular building that I can think about where the tenants, as an 8-unit building, and the landlord had abandoned it. We got a 7A administrator appointed by the housing court to run it, but then a new owner came in after several years. We had done a lot of repairs. So a new landlord came in, went to court and got the building back, and then proceeded to want to get all the tenants out. And even though this is a rent stabilized building, which is, 8 units, but with, 6 or more is usually rent stabilized, and this building had 8. Unfortunately, the landlord said he needed two of the tenants' apartments on the first floor for his family. And at that time, under the rent stabilization law, the landlord could say he needed apartments for his family, and therefore get the tenants out, even though they were rent stabilized. And we went to housing court first, and then we actually went to Supreme Court to fight this. And ultimately, the tenants, there's one tenant left in the building that's still there. And she has a right to stay because she wasn't one of the first two. But the first floor apartments, they've lived there for years, 20, 30 years. And they eventually had to get out. So that was a heartbreaker and a really hard loss. It was a lot of time spent with the community, supporting them, rallies, going to court, supporting them. And, luckily, I have to say that in the 2019 HTPF, the Housing Tenant Stability Protection Act, the law has been changed now so that landlords can't take more than one apartment for their family. And in that building too, the real problem is the landlord still, and this is like 6 years ago, the landlord still has not repaired those apartments for his family. They sit there vacant. So, there's a real injustice there. So, there are things like that really kind of, like it's difficult, but we continue because we also help individuals with problems with their landlords not getting their leases, helping seniors, especially now seniors getting their, what they call SCREE, senior citizen rent increase exemption, which freezes their rent and helps them, afford to stay in their homes. So there are things that we do on a regular basis too, that we get little victories along the way. The food pantry was in existence before then, but it really ramped up during the pandemic. Yes, we're still every Tuesday. We have 3 sites right now. There's 145 South 3rd Street, which is a social services center, and it's also a senior building. That's the largest one. We also have a food pantry at 353 South 3rd Street every Wednesday, and then also on Wednesday at Taylor White, which is a NYCHA project. So there are three locations. But during the pandemic, it focused at 145, and there were hundreds and hundreds every day of people being served, every week, not every week being served because the need was so great in the community. We got donations from restaurants too, and, really, ramped up. Well, the neighborhood has changed a lot. Years ago, there were many vacant lots around. There was trash and garbage in all these vacant lots. The community was not well maintained by the city. I mean, really, there was a I don't know if you could call it redlining in that way, but, abandoned cars, burned cars, out on the street just left, broken fire hydrants. We had a youth group that we called the Southside Smoke Busters, and we went around for a couple of days and checked all the fire hydrants, and there were many that they wouldn't work. If it was a fire, they wouldn't. So the city had really abandoned Williamsburg, or the South Side at least. And, what I see now is that since there seemed to be such a revitalization and new people moving in, that, services are much better prepared, are much better, provided for the community. There are some parks over on Marcy Avenue and South 3rd and South 5th that are, and Rodney that are being renovated right now. These are parks that have been sitting there for years and years, completely, left without any kind of amenities or beautification, and now they're being fixed. So there's a lot of good things. Crime is way down. In the 70s and 80s, and even in the early 90s, there was a lot of drug activity in the community. We worked closely with the police. They had community policing at that time. They would meet with us every week. We would have people from the neighborhood come into the office to talk about the problems they were seeing. If they didn't want to do it at the precinct council meeting, or they didn't want to, talk about it in public, they could do that. So we would meet with them and try to figure out how they could, what locations they could try to, alleviate some of the drug problems. So there was a lot of crime and a lot of drug problems. That's been drastically reduced. People think that, well, this completely, and I hear this from like city, coalitions and larger groups from the city. They think that Williamsburg is gentrified, and it's all, that's all there is. And then we do have still a vibrant Latino community that's still here, that's still living here, that's still working here, that's still thriving. And so I hope that continues. That's what we're about, keeping people here. And attracting, people that want to maintain the neighborhood, that don't want to take and say, oh, we're here now, it's better. They want to, they want to meld into what's here and help us improve what's here. We mostly speak to housing, but what I would like to say is that they should get involved in the community. They should know what their rights are, both as tenants and, their rights as community members, and get involved and go to meetings and talk to their neighbors and try to work together, because as I've learned through all these years, organizing and working together is the way you really come up with solutions and improve things.
Thank you very much.
Okay.